all thrown off. Okay, so thank you for coming to the Wednesday, March 24th, Reimagining Public Safety Community Task Force meeting. We're going to go ahead and call this meeting to order. And let's see, let me get my, I'm so busy listening, I didn't look at my agenda. We're gonna do some roll call. First is Marisol. She's not here yet. Eddie.
Here.
Yeah, I see you. Luis.
Present.
Don.
I'm here.
Wanda. I know she's going to be absent today. And then Randy.
Here.
Kristen.
I'm here.
James Lee. Armand Lee.
Here.
Laura.
Present.
Marcus.
Yes, ma'am.
Joey.
Good evening.
Hi, Deborah.
Present.
Andres. Nakari. And then I know Ben's here, but he's on, he can't respond right now. David. Tamisha.
Present.
Linda.
Present.
And BK.
Here.
Okay. Excuse me. So I'm going to go ahead and read over the meeting procedures. We did not have any public comment or through written for today's meeting. So we will have public comment at the beginning of the meeting and following each agendized item. And if you are tuning in via the Zoom link, then you can use the raise your hand feature. And attendees will have 2 minutes to click the raise your hand button. And speakers will be called upon in the order that they select the feature, the raise your hand feature. And when called upon, you will be unmuted and allowed to speak. Speakers are allowed up to 1 minute on public comment and on agenda items. And then after the allotted time, you will then be muted. And if you're on your telephone, then you can do the raise your hand by pressing *9.
I'm starting the timer.
So at this time, we're not going into public comments yet. We will be approving or several sets of minutes. So I will be using our polling feature. Let's see if we have any other people waiting, and we don't in our attendees. Okay, so we have to approve the February 10th, 2021 minutes. And do we have a motion to approve the February 10 meeting minutes?
I make a motion, Linda Whitmore, to approve the February 10th minutes.
Yes. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay. So if you all could vote. And attendees, please do not vote. Ben, I'm not sure if you can hear us, but if you have a chance to vote, I'm not sure if you have or not, but we are approving the February 10, 2021 minutes. Has everyone, okay, it looks like everyone has had a chance to go ahead and do that. Okay, so next we have the February 24th, 2021 minutes. Do we have a motion to approve the February 24th, 2021 minutes?
Linda Whitmore, I make a motion to approve the February 24th minutes.
Second.
I read them all too, so I'm.
That's exciting. Okay, I'm going. So if everyone can please vote on that. And again, I ask that the attendees refrain from answering the question. Okay, I can't tell how many of you are here, but okay, so our final set is to approve the March 10th, 2021 minutes. And do we have a motion to accept the March 10th, 2021?
Waiting for Linda. I'm waiting for Linda.
Okay, I'll make a motion to approve
Second.
the March 10th.
Okay, Linda and Marcus. Okay, we're gonna. Okay, it looks like we have everyone, and let's see. Okay, great. Now we are going to open up this meeting for public comments. And if any of the attendees would like to speak at this time, please raise your hand. You will have 2 minutes to raise your hand. And in the meantime, we will call on speakers as they are in the order that you raise your hand, and you will have 1 minute to speak.
I started the timer now, and we do have one speaker. Give me 1 second. All right, Victoria, you have 1 minute to speak. You may go ahead and start.
Good evening. I hope you all are well. I definitely appreciate the emphasis on trying to do some reforms with the RPD. I know that we're hoping to see some mental health experts added, but worry that reducing any of the budget for the RPD or RFD will have significant impacts on the already stretched condition of the RPD and RFD. And would like that to be taken into consideration. I know that, you know, the entire budget of Richmond is stretched right now, but there's already a lot of crime in a lot of places, you know, that the RPD can't get to service members who don't feel safe. And I think taking away from their budget, I know that, you know, adding mental health experts is very much needed, but I think just to be cognizant of taking away from their budget. That's what I have.
All right, thank you. We still have about 30 seconds remaining for public comment. If anyone would still like to raise their hand.
Don, I see you. We're waiting for the public, and I'll call on you after.
Okay, well, I am a public.
Okay, let us have the attendees use the 2 minutes, and then I'll get to you.
2 minutes is over.
Thank you. Yes, Don.
I just wanted to reinforce what the last person said about making sure that we don't start slashing and burning on our police services to the point where the people don't feel protected. You've heard me get up and speak before about how many times my house has been burglarized or as such. Just again, last night, broke into my backyard, stole about $800 worth of tools. That's in the past 6 weeks. That's about $3,300 worth of stuff stolen out of my backyard. And I don't even file a police report because they don't have the resources to do anything about it. I said, and so what happens when we cut the budget even further? I mean, I don't feel protected, not the least bit protected. Every time I hear a noise in my backyard, I get something to go hit somebody with or whatever. Just, I hope my neighbor doesn't take out his garbage and make too much noise. Thank you.
Okay, Eddie, and then Louise, and then we're going to go into our next agenda item. Can you put it's timer, you each get 1 minute.
Thank you. I was just gonna say to Don and to the person who spoke before, I don't think I've seen any of y'all in the community conversation discussions, and I would like to extend the invite for the next one for you all to come and be in community with everybody else, so you can express your worries. I mean, that's pretty much all I gotta say. Thank you.
Louise?
Yeah, can we get to work?
Yes, thank you.
Whoa.
Okay, the next item is staff reports. And I just wanted to briefly announce that the transcript from the community conversation, along with the entire chat, has been posted to the website. I invite you all to take a look at that from our last community conversation, and that oops, sorry, I'm not used to being the timer. Then and the video recordings of all the community roundtable conversations are also on the website.
Okay.
And to remind folks that we have one final community conversation, and that is on April 15th. And with that, I'm going to go turn it over to Jim Nantell for our first agenda item.
Thank you very much. Appreciate that. Hopefully, I think all of you should have received this little memo from me to the committee task force members relative to some what I've termed clarification questions around the process. And as I indicated in it, I hope you've had a chance to review it in advance. Joanne and I have had the chance to attend many of the subcommittee meetings. And having looked at the videos for your previous meetings and the ones that I've now been able to participate with you on, there's a number of questions that have come up for me, and I would like to raise them to find out if you share the need to answer these questions or not. And so what I want to do right now is I'm not looking to have you answer them tonight, other than one of the questions. I really would like to get an answer from tonight. But I wanted to run through these, and I have a suggestion as to how I think maybe what group should be involved. So as I sent out the memo, you will have seen that I had suggested maybe some of these you want to refer to a subcommittee to deal with. Maybe you want to address these questions as a whole task force. Or maybe you don't think the questions are, some of them are legitimate. So, but I also thought you may have other questions that you too are wondering about, because as we've gone to the meetings, we're hearing different conclusions around these questions. So we thought we needed to elevate them for the full group to consider and provide direction on. So as you can see, the first question really pertains to this notion of and as I said, I want to just go through the questions now. I'll come back to the one that I really want to get some answers on tonight because time is of the essence. But the rest, I'm looking for feedback from the task force tonight as to, are these legitimate questions? Who would you like to assign to follow up on them? And are there other similar questions that we need to be adding to the list? So this first question is about the term public safety and whether or not, as you look at your charge, so to speak, that the council gave you, is it really your intention to include the fire department's budget in this discussion? To date, there's not been any presentation from the fire department. So I wanted to elevate that question and find out. Are you serious about that? And if you are, then we probably need to start contacting the fire department and scheduling their participation. On the other hand, you may say as a group, it's not that clear to us that that's something we should be doing. And we could also refer that question to the city council if you feel we need more clarification from them. The second question has to deal with how we decide and whether you as a task force are going to make specific recommendations about reallocation of funding in the police department. So as you know, your charge is to come up with a preferred policing model. And it's not clear what the role of the task force is going to play relative to funding the cost. As you will remember from your previous work meeting as a task force, the Smart Budget and Resource Allocation Subcommittee had shared a possible funding mechanism. And I think my understanding was that they were not necessarily recommending it now, but it was one they were considering. And the example that they shared was that they would possibly come back to you as a task force and recommend that we fund the things that you as a task force are recommending to meet the preferred policing model by taking 50% out of the public safety budgets, and whether that includes police or fire obviously is still a question, but it's obviously police, and 50% from the projected general fund balance, carryover balance that was discussed with the city council, I think in February, relative to a significant a fund balance being projected. So from my understanding, I've kind of heard from subcommittees two different things. One is the approach is that the decision relative to reallocating existing police and city budget resources is up to the city council and staff to deal with. Another one that I've heard is that the task force will develop specific recommendations as to how to reallocate existing police budgets and other city budgeted resources. So that's two that I've heard, and I think it would be very helpful for the budget subcommittee to hear something clearly from the task force about where you stand on that. Are you expecting them to come up with recommendations on how to reallocate police resources, or are you simply looking for them to kind of come up with an approach to how we fund those things in terms of like the formula approach that was suggested? And I know that they're still discussing exactly what they're going to recommend, so I don't want to conclude where they are just yet, but I think that's important for them. The third question is the expectation relative to the budget recommendations that we will include cost. One of the subcommittees was saying, in some of the cases, we're not really sure how to come at the cost. We know there's certain kinds of services or programs we want to recommend to the city council as part of the preferred policing model. And they were suggesting we'll leave that up to others to work on. And so that's a question for me is are we expecting the city staff to come up with those dollars and present those as part of our recommendation to the city council? Just what are you planning to do in that regard? The next question has to do with priorities. Will all of the recommendations that you make as a task force, will they be viewed at the same priority? Are all of them in this, an equal priority to you, or would you be thinking about trying to group them by certain classifications, high, medium, low, whatever, or do you want to rank them one to whatever? And obviously, if you were going to do that, you would probably then want to make sure that you get all the recommendations and then you can prioritize them. So that's a question that would be helpful, I think, for us to understand what you as a task force are thinking. I'm assuming that we're and I just want to clarify and get your confirmation of this, that we are expecting the subcommittees to come up with a written recommendation for the full task force to review and vote on. Is our assumption. I just want to confirm that. If there is a strongly held opposing opinions by members of the task force, I have heard this suggested early on in the conversations by this task force, is maybe would you be willing to allow a minority opinion to be shared as part of what goes to the city council. Maybe you don't want that to happen, but if you did, I think it's helpful for us to know that in advance and to plan for that. Secondly, if you were interested in the notion of allowing a minority opinion to be expressed, you may not want to allow that just because one of us has a concern, one of you has a concern, the rest of you don't have a minority opinion you want to share. So you may want to have a threshold, for example, which is 6A on this list that I think would be helpful. And these things here, I really feel like, you may want to just recommend this to a subcommittee to kind of come up with a recommendation for you on these questions rather than you as a task force wrestling with these as a full group. And then, as I indicated, even if you decide you don't want to prioritize, what I'm struggling with is it realistic to prepare a package of recommendations essentially 3 weeks from now, so that we could get it into the city council for the inclusion in their budget review that happens in May and June. So if you're inclined, and this is the one I'd like to have you discuss tonight, if you're inclined to say, we want to get some of our budget related recommendations to the city council by April 15th, then I think we need to actually change the schedule in your schedule of April 14th is supposed to be a meeting for children and youth, because I think we have to have a task force meeting to look at those specific recommendations in writing for you to then to decide that. And so that's why I'm saying, if you're trying to meet that deadline, I think we got to reallocate some of the meetings as we've allocated time right now. Relative to this notion of getting more time, I think the budget subcommittee had come back and had talked about this a couple of meetings ago about the need to maybe go back to the city council and say, hey, look, this notion of us getting it all wrapped up by in time for the budget discussion this year is probably not realistic. And so one option was to keep the momentum going. Maybe we just go back to the council and say, look, we'd like to get to you, by the end of the summer or something like that, so that you can get some of these recommendations funded for that new fiscal year that starts in July. On the other hand, you may say we need more time than that. And another idea is possibly go back to them and say you'd like to have until the end of the calendar year for you to come up with your specific recommendations. And then that would wrap into the next fiscal year budget process that starts in February of 2022. So those are two options relative to that question. And then question 8 really has to do with the process for how you want to deal with these questions that I've come up with, and that you may want to add to this list. What are the process questions that you think we still as a group need to wrestle with? And so I realize some of them you may want to deal with as a task force as the whole. Some of them you may say, yeah, we'd rather have a subcommittee spend some time on it. It's easier for 5 or 6 people to wrestle through it than it is for 21 people. So that, and I've got some different options here as to how you might do that. So any questions or comments on whether these are legitimate questions that you think we need to focus some time on, and whether there's other ones that you'd like to add to the list?
Tamisha, I see you have your hand raised.
Yes. I did. I read this. Can everybody hear me?
Yes.
I did look this over, and I might have misread it. I felt like this was proposed for the entire group to discuss and to struggle with or address these questions. I would like to point out, though, that who wrote the memo again?
I did.
Was it Jim?
Jim Nantell.
Yeah, I want. Yeah, I want to first. I want to say that I appreciate your full petition, Jen. Your full participation in the process. But I also want to point out that this was supposed to be a process for the community to grapple with figuring out, how do we reimagine public safety in Richmond? How do we come together as those who work in Richmond, live in Richmond, and care about Richmond, as well as residents, get involved in the process and talk about what are the alternatives to policing that could get at the root cause of violence in the community. And I appreciate all the questions you have, but just in my short experience as you have come on, is that I'm not sure, is this more about what you want to hear, what you desire to see, or is this more about what the community can process on and what we can come up with? Because I heard a lot about what you would like to hear, what you would like to see, what you would like to understand. And I thought that it was supposed to be a way for us all to kind of process and struggle with these things. And although I appreciate all the questions, I also feel very just challenged with the way you have showed up in these spaces. And I'm just trying to understand, where's all this coming from?
Okay, let me quickly try to respond to that. I'm the interim director for community services, and Sal Vaca was the one who was in the position originally and was responsible for working with the staff on the task force. And Sal retired, and the city then hired me on an interim basis. I'm here for the next 4 to 6 months to help in the process. So you are absolutely right. That's why I said to you, I don't know if these questions are legitimate from the task force perspective. You may say, Jim, you may think that's a question that we need to answer, but you don't think it's important, or maybe now's not the time to answer it. I've just been struggling as we have attended the subcommittee meetings, and we're hearing different perspectives about, particularly the budget piece is, who's doing what in that regard. So it's really up to you all. You could say some of these questions.
And I get right, and I get that you're struggling. And I'm not sure if we're responsible for trying to figure out like what you're particularly struggling with. I will say that I'm wondering, like, is your role to support this process, to push us forward to a decision, to gain more clarity? I'm just trying to understand, because I know that everybody feels like we want to get to work. Everybody feels like we want to make recommendations that are responsible, that are reasonable, that would get at the root cause of violence in our community, but also make sure that we don't have a police response for every incident, which is not necessary. I heard you say, well, if this is around real reimagining public safety, that fire is a part of public safety as well, and should we also be looking at their budget? Well, I don't know a firefighter who has showed up and killed someone as a result of a chokehold, right? Or has I haven't seen anyone from a fire department be implicated in anything that you would consider police brutality. And I think they have a role, fire has a role in public safety that we underutilize. And maybe we need to be thinking about the budget of the fire department as maybe not even being enough when we start to think about responses for mental health and substance abuse. So I just want to challenge us not to get sidetracked and to continue to incorporate community voice. And I think talking about the budget is complicated. City budgets, county budgets are all complicated. But I think once we figure out what we need, and I think somebody already said, we were requesting a percentage of the budget. Should that come from APD? Maybe. But I think everybody here is being intentional. Everybody here has their own expertise and everybody is committed. And I'm just not sure where this energy around your confusion is coming from. And I don't think there's one minority voice on this council. I think everybody on this task force, I think everybody has had a chance to weigh in on every decision and choose where they want to place their bodies to have influence. And that's the end of my comments.
Okay, Don.
Thank you very much. Jim, I appreciate the work that you put into this. I appreciate that this is a start. This is not all inclusive, that we've been invited to add things to it. We've been invited to remove things from it, but it's, before we had a blank sheet of paper to work from, and now we have something to work from. It opens up the line of discussion so that we can discuss each of these items, say, no, this is not important to us. Yes, this is important to us. Oh, by the way, let's also add these things to it. So I appreciate that. And I'm not one that's going to ask you to just shut up and sit down and back out of the way. I appreciate your involvement on this. I understand your position as the interim director, as representing staff, as Sal was supposed to do before he retired. So thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, Randy. I mean, excuse me. I'm sorry,
Yeah,
Laura.
Laura's next.
Yeah.
Laura.
Yes, thank you. And thank you to Tamisha for articulating that. You've perfectly articulated some concerns that I share with you. And I just want to say that I completely agree with what Tamisha said. And just to add my own experience, I took a fair amount of time to carefully read through your memo, Jim. And I'm looking at the notes that I took while reading it, and I underlined the question. You wrote like, the question is, and I'm like, whose question? If these were questions coming from, and I ask, are these questions coming from the budget subcommittee? Because if the budget subcommittee were to tell me that they feel like they're having trouble understanding what is expected of them, then I would definitely like to take time to consider that ask from them. But if the question is specifically coming from just one individual who's not a member of the task force, then I'd rather direct my energy to something else other than that. So I guess I was confused as I was reading this memo. At first I thought these were asks coming from from our committee members, our task force members. And quite frankly, I felt annoyed when I realized that this was actually not coming from other members of our committee. And I really would like to spend more time answering the questions that our various task force members have. And then the last thing I'd like to say is I remember early on we discussed appointing a chair for our group among us, one of us to be the chair. And I really do believe that a lot of the questions that you're struggling with, Jim, would be moot if we had a chair who could help guide us through this process. Thank you.
Okay, now Randy.
Yeah, for me, I feel a lot of the same way Tamisha and Laura do. And the fact that I think a lot of these questions need to come from us and not come from you, Jim. I'm not saying that you didn't put the time to figure it out. And I think you're trying to do your best to help. But I think a lot of these questions need to come from us. And I think a lot of these questions have kind of been answered in our committee meetings. And then I will push back at Don. And Don will yeah, he's going to say that it's a blank piece of paper because he's not in any of the subcommittee meetings. So he hasn't been there to see the work, to see the people, the stuff that people has done. So he doesn't know what's going on because he hasn't been in those meetings. He's not part of any subgroup. So for him, yeah, it's going to be a blank piece of paper and this helps him. But what doesn't, the work that people is already doing in the weeks and the research and the stuff that other groups have done, I think we got answers for that. I think if certain subgroups have certain questions about certain things, I think this is the space to figure it out. And I think we can have that discussion. And because I think some of your answers, some of your questions have been answered in a certain subgroups. They just need to be answered in the group as a whole. And I think that needs to be brought out to the light. But a lot of the work has already been done, and we already. It feels like asking these questions. It made me read like we got to start back at step one, and we're too far in the game to come back and start at step one. And I think we need to have the focus to go for the work that we have doing forward. And I think that's where we need to go. And in the community and the people in the task force, if they have these questions or any other questions, to bring it here to have those questions asked.
Okay, Joey.
So I'll try to make light of this to begin with. I think Jim eats quite a bit of turkey dinners with all the questions that he had laid out. I think maybe what Jim could do is maybe clarify what he believes is his involvement as a facilitator or staff or what have you, as far as what he believes his involvement is in the committee, and maybe that might clarify some things for the group. The other thing that I'll just touch on, and it was brought up in one of the subcommittees that I belong to, and I think there was some agreement in it. Public safety, the term public safety is, for most, is police and fire. So when you talk about budget or reallocating funds from public safety, that's reallocating from police and fire. If that's not the case and the focus is on the police department solely, then I mean that's something that needs to be clarified. But when we talk about public safety, that's the police and the fire department. That's all I have.
Okay, Randy.
Yeah, I want because, and I think that's where I think a lot of people can confuse, because I think a lot of that stuff, and I'm gonna speak for myself because I was confused, because a lot of people thought about public safety in terms of the budget, about that's where the pot of money was coming from, and a lot of people were confused about how, because of course a lot of us are new to the budget and hearing public safety, but literally our task is in front of us to talk about a policing model and transitioning and reducing police force. I think that it's clear the directive that was given to us by the mayor to come and have this issue to do. I think we're too busy arguing about semantics and process and not really looking at the work that we're tasked to do, and then it's right in front of us. And I think for us, I think it's to maintain that focus. And I think the lingo is new for a lot of people. A lot of people are new to this kind of work, or new to the budget. I know I am, and I get confused. I had questions when I heard public safety budget, and I heard one thing. I was like, okay, but that's what we need to go to. And people are like, no, it includes this, this, and this. And I was like, I learned that I needed to focus on just the police budget. So for me, that was the confusion at first. But then once I figured out the confusion, it was going down the line, because it says, like, literally, it's on the screen that what we're supposed to do. And that's what our charge is. And that's what we need to go forward is. And I think that should clear up the confusion, but not so much the questions, but like what the process is in front of us.
If I can respond to the question that I think Joey asked, was, how do I see my role? And again, as Don indicated, I'm, as the department head that was assigned responsibility to work with the task force and to support the task force, my feeling has been, for example, I just hear questions at meetings, having reviewed your previous meetings and having attended some subcommittee meetings and the few meetings now that I've been on since February, is I feel like there's questions that don't get answered. There's questions that you have about how we're going to do something, or for example, the budget subcommittee came in, and I think a couple of meetings ago, and raised the question about, we need to go back to the city council and extend the time frame. And so for me, as a staff person assigned to support the work of the task force, I thought that was a question that we got to raise to the group and have the group give us a decision on, as opposed to just leave it unaddressed. And that's really when Laura asked, yeah, they are the questions that I have gotten as a result of reviewing the work you've done that I thought needed to get answered at some point. And that's why I'm saying, if you don't think they're legitimate questions or they have any value, or as Laura's saying, maybe they're not important now. I just realized that your charge said this needed to be done in time to include in the new fiscal year budget. And folks, you're not going to make that right now. That's not happening. And I know that, as I've attended some subcommittees, they have talked about, well, we have some priority recommendations we want to make now. Oh, okay, I hear that. Well, I got to go back to the task force and say, are you comfortable as a task force with allowing if you are, then you need to tell your subcommittees, come forward with the ones that you have right now, that you want to propose to the city council right now. So I just feel like I'm hearing questions that I think need to be raised and get some direction from the group as a whole. And if the subcommittee, I definitely agree that the budget ones are really, the budget subcommittee can wrestle with those and come back with a specific recommendation. But to speak to the point about the public safety, is we've had lots of meetings, you have had lots of meetings on the police budget. And I'm thinking, well, if we're serious about it's really public safety and we maybe wanted to reallocate fire, if that's true, then I need to elevate for your discussion. Do we need to get fire in here? If that's what you really want to do, I look at the charge as a staff person just supporting you. I look at the charge and say, I don't think that's what the council intended. It seemed to me they said we got to look at the community policing model and change it to a new model. And so it seemed to me was focused on police. But it's just a question that I think you need to wrestle with at some point and give direction on, because if you want to include the fire department, we need to start, as somebody said, none of them have come to the meeting. Well, we haven't invited them. We've invited you. I shouldn't say we, I apologize. You have not invited them to participate. If you want that part of the discussion, then we need to wrap that into your future meeting planning and come back to you with that. So that's why I'm raising the questions. And I will, at this point, the only question I really would like to get answered tonight, and maybe again, we can call for a vote of the task force if you want to even focus on it. But I want to go back to, I need to get something back to the city council to let them know that we are not going to meet the timeline to get all of our recommendations to them in time for this new fiscal year budget that will start in July 1st. So that's one of the questions I would hope that you could answer for me tonight. And if you don't want to even deal with the other questions, that's fine. They're out there. And if a subcommittee wants to wrestle with them, I'm here to serve you. So whatever, I'm just trying to raise questions that I think need to be considered in a timely fashion.
Marisol?
Hi. So I just want to reiterate what Tamisha and Randy have said and Laura have said. First, I think, Jim, you continue to say public safety, and that's why you're getting hung up, right, on the word public safety. And what does that mean? Public safety can include a lot of other things other than just police and firefighters. However, City Council has charged us with one thing, and our colleague Deborah has uplifted this over and over and over again in these meetings, that has said, as you have on your screen here, a preferred policing model. So my question is, do firefighters police people?
If you're asking me that question, I would say to you, the preferred policing model comes from the assignment you've gotten. So I'm not making that up, right? That's what you were told.
So I don't understand the discussion around firefighters. I know that the word public safety is really large for people, and that's like really hard to sit with. But my thing is that we have a charge from City Council, as we were appointed by City Council members who created this charge, that says that we should be creating a preferred policing model, right? And a plan for implementation. And so unless, I don't know, if somebody else understands firefighters as policing, please let us know so we can start doing that. However, this is the charge, and I'm here to create a plan this year. So you can tell whoever you want at City Council that this task force has been working in our subgroups, answering the questions, working together in meetings that you're not there, communicating with each other through email. And so we can get the work done. We want to create a plan, and that plan is going to be based on recommendations from all of the subgroups. And we are beginning to collaborate more and more. And this meeting should be about updating from those subgroups not from you updating us. And so if we look at our charge and we can all agree with our charge, we can start working on a plan to implement this year. Because right now we haven't voted on an extension. And so we don't know if that's happening. But yet the budget cycle is currently happening. Fiscal year means budget. That's currently happening.
Right.
We are currently working in our subgroups. So you can hold off on telling them that it's not going to be done this year, whoever you are reporting to. We are working and we're here to work. So unless you need to continue this conversation, we have updates. We would like to continue. I would at least like to continue the work.
So I will withdraw all my questions. They are available for you to consider. I'm really concerned about the process. I'm concerned that we should be communicating whether you as a group think you can get this done in the time in order to have it considered this year. I think you should be wrestling with that, but I will withdraw my questions. I've elevated them for you, and it seems to me that clearly the overwhelming feedback to me is stay out of it, Nantell. We'll deal with it. Okay, I will withdraw my questions and leave it to you.
Randy, I see you. And then I also, I have a question too, but go ahead, Randy.
Oh, my only question is, and it's just part of the process, is based on what you said about we not getting this in time for the budget. Like, what is the timeline for us to get that into the budget? That's the only legitimate question that we have to ask the city. Like, when is that budget timeline? Because the community doesn't create that timeline, the city does. So the question that I took that maybe is the most legitimate one is like, when is that community timeline? When is that timeline to have that put in for that budget discussion and to see if that we can have that done? Because that's important. Because if you're telling me from the city that it's not going to be put in on time, what is that time? And I said I'm confused because the city just came out with their calendar 2 weeks ago. So do they even know what's their time? Because they're still saying we're going to have community conversations next month about budget and stuff like that. So what is the time frame? That's a question that I think that we would want answered.
I will defer to the task force if they want me to respond to that.
Yeah, respond.
I have to make a motion. Can I have a motion to have that question answered? I make a motion to have that question answered.
Second.
Second.
Jim, so do the recommendations have to be in within the next couple of weeks in order for it to get into the April?
Yeah, if you look at question number 7, what it said was, if we are going to have recommendations to be included in the review by the city council and the community on the budget, we have to get this stuff in 3 weeks before the meeting. So if we wanted to get something on the city council agenda so that they can hear your recommendations and then make them available for the budget review process, we would need to have them to them by April 15th. And then they would hear them on the 27th of April. That's when it would be on their agenda to receive your specific recommendations relative to budget items that you'd like to see included in the new fiscal year that starts July 1st. Again, as I heard from Deborah and the budget subcommittee, they were thinking maybe they wanted to push this all back, and we would have recommendations that would come to the city council at the end of the calendar year. And so I've heard that discussion. I just want to get some direction from this task force. Is how do you want to do it? Do you want to try to get something in now for this fiscal year that starts in July, or do you want to wait and do it in the summer? That's all I'm looking for.
Okay. So I think for us, when we have the discussion with all the other people in the subgroup, when that happens after the end of this conversation, I think we would have an answer to see if we would need to push back for, instead of having that children and youth review, to have that conversation.
You're right.
Comment. I think that's for us to discussion. I think we should have that discussion. I think we're going to have that discussion. I think your questions maybe like, jumping the gun before we got there, but I think we were getting there. I know for some of the things that we talked about, we were getting there today. So I think that helps answer that question, that we need to have something in by April 14th for that to be included. And I think we have a timeline. That answers my question. I don't know if anybody has anything else. But that's the question that I really think we need to have.
Yeah, I just think you're right, Randy. You'll be better informed to make that decision after you make your reports. I agree. I'm sorry. I meant to suggest that we would hold off on that question, and I made a mistake there. I should have held off on that, the budget question until you all got a chance to report. I mean, that due date until you all got a chance to see where you are as a group. So I think we should. I would agree. Let's withhold any decision on that until the end of your reports. Is my recommendation to you.
Okay. Yeah. I would like to. This is like the first real time that we heard that we have an exact date. A lot of it is like we got to get it in, but nobody's really giving us a specific date. So to hear that, and I think that people have been doing the work to get along to get the suggestions, like that helps. I read it, I was like, okay, is April 14th our deadline? Like, so to see like people have been moving along, not only working in subgroups, but working outside of it. I know, should I work at this as much as I do with my goddamn job, and I get no money from this. So like, I care because I spend my time. But my hairline getting pushed back a little bit. I'm scared. That's how much I've been working. So,
and you don't have to feel pressured. You can delay it. You don't have to do it right away. It's up to you.
Right.
Okay. So Armand, do you still have your hand raised or no?
Yeah, I think it was sort of answered though. So my question was really procedural, because I know Jim said it would take 3 weeks, but I'm wondering, like, once we have all of the recommendations of this task force, couldn't the city council just call a special emergency meeting? Does it really have to take 3 weeks for that to be done? So that's my question.
I'd be happy to answer it if you want me to. I'm not trying to put you through formal, but I know people are frustrated that I'm taking too much of the time. So,
Linda, if you're asked a question, Jim, give us the answer, please.
Okay. I'm sorry. What's the question again? He said,
are the city council able to create a special?
Oh, yes, thank you. Yes, actually, you remind me that it takes 3 weeks for me to get something on the agenda, but it doesn't take 3 weeks for a council member to do it. A council member can get something on the agenda themselves with much shorter time frame. So that's right. Unfortunately, we do not have a liaison member from the council assigned to this group right now. But any one of the council members could do that. You're correct. And I would agree with the suggestion that it would be better to have a special meeting, a study session or something with the council to go through your recommendations rather than try to cover that at a regular scheduled council meeting. I would agree with that.
Okay, and I do see you, Joey and Louise, but as for me administratively, I would like to hear from the group this evening about how you all want to proceed with the first meeting in April. Because we are scheduled to have Department of Children and Youth, and we can easily just take that off and do whatever you guys need to do and create a working meeting around that. But I just want to make sure that we have that information at some point throughout this evening. So thank you for that. Go ahead, Joey.
Yeah, I'll just argue that I don't think April 15th is a hard deadline. Obviously, the sooner that we can get recommendations to the city council for implementation in fiscal year 21-22, the better off and the more likely that those recommendations will be taken into consideration for this fiscal year. But as I shared with the budget subcommittee, I think the biggest thing is to get some really good recommendations forward for the city council to review and to absorb and to take into consideration. And hopefully it's the city council that will task city staff with getting those recommendations implemented sooner than later. Hopefully some now, maybe, some because of fiscal constraints or otherwise would have to wait until the following fiscal year. But, I think that's where we're at. And there's a few folks that have already said, we've got to get the work done.
Thank you, Joey. Louise?
Yeah, just quickly, Jim, I know you've been in the game long enough to know none of this is personal, right? So just for myself, I do appreciate the the work you put into this list. I think a lot of it is kind of synthesizing and summarizing some of the things that we've been talking about. So I do share some of the frustrations that have been expressed. And I hope you can understand that it's because a lot of the work has been done, right? And it does feel like you just kind of came out of nowhere in some ways, but just know that, at least speaking for myself, like, it's definitely appreciated the sort of frames that you've kind of brought to the work. So I think a lot of these questions we can take back to our subgroups and use them to help guide our conversations and kind of what direction we want the work to go, and just kind of helps you know, continue to keep it focused. As far as changing the focus of the April 14th meeting, I would be for that. I don't know if we're ready to make some type of motion for that, or if that's just something that we kind of informally agree to. But I do think I agree with, I'm blanking out on who just spoke, but I agree that we are ready to, or that we can be ready in about 3 weeks to make at least initial recommendations, and then just continue to make or to look into how we can make additional recommendations after that April 15th deadline, right? And I think that's something that's at least been discussed in our subcommittee group. Thank you.
Okay, Tamisha?
This is going to be real quick, because I also want to be clear that the city can modify the budget anytime in a year. So, and it's not like it hasn't been done before, and that it's not like budget requests don't come from different city departments all year long, and councils vote on modifying the general fund to meet those needs, and they authorize the city manager and like give the city manager permission to modify the current year budget. So I don't want us to walk away thinking, oh, we got to get everything in now, or that, you know, of course I would prefer if we got our most important issues addressed in the budget before it is finalized and voted on. But I don't want us to walk away thinking that budgets aren't modified all year long, and that we should stay at the table and we should continue to push our leaders to make those modifications throughout the year as these recommendations come forward from this task force, and that we organize to make sure that this task force continues on until the needs around public safety are met in the community as we see it.
Okay.
Agreed.
Oh, go. Was someone going to say anything?
No, I just want to say agreed.
Okay. So can we take a few minutes right now to decide about the following meeting? About the April.
Wasn't one of the task force a subcommittee's gonna make a recommendation about what they wanted to do on that day, I think? Maybe we should go to, listen to the subcommittee's
That's fine
report.
too. But before we do any of that, Linda, you have your hand raised, and then we also have to have public comment on this item.
No, I think you said my question, Joanne. I think we're at a point now where we have to look at our meetings and see what we're doing as far as recommendations. Subgroups, you might have worked on recommendations within your group, but we haven't brought them before this task force for us to if we're supposed to do it as a task force, I thought, hear recommendations, decide on them as a task force, not as a subgroup, but as a task force, the ones we as a group want to bring forth to the city council. We haven't done that yet. And so I'm looking at our meeting schedule. We don't meet again until the 14th of April. Am I right? Our next subgroup meeting, task force?
That's correct.
Yeah, and so we should decide today what we're going to do. If we're going to possibly move that meeting up, if we plan on doing something for the 14th or the 15th, bring recommendations to this task force from each subgroup at least one or two that we can vote on as a task force, and then have those ready to present. Maybe I'm going in the wrong direction, but I thought that's what we were all supposed to be charged to do as a subgroup. Create recommendations for each of our categories, bring them back to this group, this task force. We as a task force vote on the ones we want to prioritize or what we thought was important to us as a task force, and then present those. Now, if I'm wrong, let me know, but I think we need to look at our dates and see what we're doing and how we're going to do this. And the way we're going right now, we won't be ready to present anything as a task force by the 14th if we don't change the schedule. So that was just looking at our scheduling and seeing what we should be doing. And I like to have, if I'm wrong about what we should do as a task force, if that was what we decided to do, recommendations, not as subgroups, but as a group coming together and deciding by the subgroups doing the work and bringing it back to us. So I'd like to get some, clarification on what I'm thinking we're doing. And if I'm wrong, let me know, please. Hopefully I'm not though, but let me know.
No, I think that you are correct, Linda, that the body as a whole should have somewhat of a consensus or a vote or deciding as a group on what to bring forth to the city council. The subgroups don't, those are just smaller groups in order to get the work done and bring it back to everyone, which is why we also have on this agenda tonight for each of the subgroups to come back and talk about what you've been doing since the last meeting. So we do have space on the agenda for that. If you guys want to go ahead and get moving with that, because we are at the end of this particular section of the agenda. But Eddie, do you want to have something pretty quick? Because we also need to do public comment on this.
Yeah, sorry. It's just a quick question for you, Joanne. I don't know if it makes sense to make a motion or would be appropriate to make a motion if we could meet on the 7th and the 14th of April. I don't know if that's something we can do.
We can't, but I kind of like Linda's idea, or maybe someone else mentioned it, but how about we do the subgroup reports and then kind of do at the end when we do kind of some recapping, we can get that in at that point.
Cool. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So we are going to open this item up for public comment right now. Again, public comment, you have 2 minutes to raise your hand. And during this 2-minute time period, we will be taking each public speaker in the order that they are received. And each attendee will have 1 minute to speak. And Lupe is going to start the 2-minute time now. And if any of the attendees would like to speak on this particular item, then you are welcome to do so now. Maybe we can all do a big stretch while we're waiting. That's my timer. Is the 2 minutes up, Lupe?
About 30 seconds left, or 23 now.
Okay. Jim, can you go ahead and stop sharing your screen, please?
Oh, sure. I'm sorry.
Thank you. No problem.
Minute period for raising hand is over.
Okay, that concludes the public comment on that. And now we will hear from the Smart Budget and Resource Allocations Subcommittee. Is there anyone from that group that wants?
I'm here.
Okay.
Not sure. I think a couple, Joey's here. Essentially, we're kind of waiting on numbers. We've only met one time since the last meeting, but we are waiting on recommendations from all the subgroups to then do a more in-depth analysis of the budget so we can essentially reallocate the funds from the RPD into the other services. So I know a couple of other groups have been working with ONS. Other people have been working possibly with SOS and talking to them and getting numbers. So essentially we're waiting. Since the last meeting and that Chief French presented, we presented a lot of questions and we haven't got all of them answered. Some of them have been, and thank you, Captain Simmons, for answering those. We got percentages. I think we're looking for raw numbers so we can do our own analysis or the documentation that you used, Captain Simmons, to then go ahead and do our analysis of that. And so we have questions waiting, like a line item budget still. We're waiting for those regarding equipment being used, officers, academies, etc. And so we're still waiting on documentation, and we're waiting on some of the recommendations from the other subgroups that will better inform our budget analysis. And we are also, I think that's kind of where we're at. I think we have the charge now that is going to help us move in the direction to do a budget analysis quickly. But is there anything else? I know Joey's here, Deborah. Anybody else like to speak from our group?
I see Joey has his hand raised.
Yeah, so this is, I think for the committee as a whole, I think that this is and I know we've given an update the last go around with a formula that was put together, and I think that's one of the issues where the term public safety came from. So, maybe one of my colleagues from the subcommittee can clarify for the group as a whole what that formula entails. If it's public safety, police and fire, then so be it. If it's public safety, meaning it's going to be the police department budget, then maybe we can all get on the same page with that.
Yeah, I think that's what the charge and what we were referring to from the addendum that Jim had sent us that said, the naming of the task force is different than the charge of the task force. And the charge itself speaks specifically to community policing and reducing policing. And so in our last group meeting, we talked about not using this very general broad term, public safety, in our actual work, but having it be focused on the police budget. And that's what I understood from the last meeting that I'm sorry you weren't able to attend, but we were able to hone in on that police budget. If there's anybody in the task force that wants to talk about that, have a discussion. If you think we need to be focusing on something else, but the charge of the group was community policing. So we're looking at the policing budget.
Okay, no, and that's great, Marisol, and I think I think that's why I said, I think we all need to be on the same page, using the same terminology. And I don't, me personally, I don't have a problem at all using specific terms that we're all, utilizing the same way. So if it's the police budget, then that's great. We're all on the same page now. Thank you.
Michelle?
Sorry, just had to unmute myself. I just wanted to offer as a resource, because I know, Chief French wants to make sure that we can answer as many of our, as the questions as possible. We also are down our crime analysts. We've lost a number of civilian positions in the department, and unfortunately our crime analyst, who provides a lot of information, is one of them, but we're going to work to try to get those answers. And then obviously some answers for budget will be answered by PD internal, and, most likely by finance. But I also want to say is that there's been a number of requests. If we could work with staff to make sure that all those requests kind of go through and also are connected to us as liaisons, so that we can make sure that those are being answered for you. And if there is a delay, we can, explain to you what the reason is. So, everybody in the task force knows that we're not just delaying it. We're actually trying to get the information that'd be helpful. The other tool that's helpful is Transparent Richmond, because a lot of, not necessarily budget related questions, but other questions have come up from the task force. And that might actually be a good resource. Obviously, we're going to provide you with specific information, but it might also be a helpful resource for everyone to have, because that was designed as an open data source for people to take a look at some of the things that people may have questions for. So that was it.
Thank you, Michelle. David?
Yeah, I was going to respond back to Joey. At the last subcommittee meeting, police fire was not included in the discussion. So let's just be very clear. There may not have been a lot of agreement on many things in the conversation, but at least on that particular one, fire was not included in the discussion for the good of the group. And then I guess back to the question in terms of questions and then getting responses back. Michelle, if I just heard you right, I mean, there are public records requests that are in. I would defer to staff. I mean, assuming that because there is defined time responses to a public records request, that's going to take priority on any other questions. So I just want to get clarification in terms of what is the clock at right now on those responses to a public records request, because that will also shape the discussion around when we might be anticipating getting responses back to the questions.
Yeah, we've had a lot of requests for information, including a public records request that came not necessarily from this committee, but it may have been a recommendation that came from this committee. And so I'm not sure what the timeline is on that, but I know that that is something that, maybe Simmons, you have some other insight on that, the department has been working to try to complete. It would be really helpful as questions come up, we have them synthesized. So if there's data and information that we have it all in one source, in one place, and that way we can prioritize what's important for the council, the task force, to get back, so that you can have the answers to your questions to make the decisions that you're being asked to make. So that's just a point of process, but you're absolutely right. There are PRA requests, so.
Did you have any other thing, David, or you're done? Okay, thank you. Deborah, and then Tamisha.
Hi, so two quick things. One, I think it's important to say that there's never been a conversation on the budget subcommittee about expanding the focus to the police, from the police to the firefighters, that's been made by any of the community-based members. And so to me, that's a bit of a red herring. It's not anything that we've ever seriously considered. One, because it's not the charge, and two, because it's not information that we've requested. Secondly, I just wanted to point out that there have been financial reports that have been made either to the task force or to subcommittees of the task force, but the documents that are related to those reports are not anywhere on the website with the other documents related to the task force. And I think it would make it a lot easier for the groups to do their work and to be able to coordinate our understanding of the budget if those financial documents and specific budget documents that talk about how much money in dollars is allocated to specific departments was also included in that information. because it's not in any of the reports that we have, with the exception of the one from mental health. Thank you.
Okay, Deborah, and I'll get with you like offline to determine exactly which documents you're talking about, because I know that we've tried to put as much as we can that's like not already available in places that you guys have access to. So I'll definitely.
Well, I was looking for the report from Ms. Brown.
Ms. Brown.
That was a financial report, the finance director. I couldn't find it anywhere on the site.
From the sub.
Yeah, we've had a few reports that I remember myself sitting in on, in which we were given specific financial information. There was an early report that was given that went through the audit of last year's city finances that gave specific numbers and allocations for various departments. And then we received an oral report and presentation from Ms. Brown from, I believe she's from the finance department, explaining the way that the current budget was being put together or had been put together that included numbers. And I raised that because when I looked through all the task force documents that are on the website, I didn't see any of those documents there.
Okay, I'll make sure I get that situated. Tamisha.
Hi, can you hear me?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Join.
Yes.
What I would like to say about just the budget, since it's like, so the police department's budget comes from the general fund. And when we're looking at how do we fund alternatives to policing, reduce police presence and responses where it's not necessary, or there will be more helpful, more impactful responses, we have to, and everybody knows this, that the police department's budget is part of the general fund. There are expenditures on the police budget that you can't do anything about, whether it's positions, retirement, all those type of things. So when you get down to the brass tacks of like what we can't redistribute from the police department, then you get to the amount that we potentially can, and if the department has any unrestricted funding. But in addition to the PD, what is the amount of unrestricted funding in the city that could also be allocated to these efforts in a sustainable way that also doesn't push the city into a deficit and then negate everything that we're trying to move forward. So I do want to put that out there, because one is like, yes, top priority is to look at the police budget, but there's just some things you can't do within that budget. And there are things we can do within the general fund that might help this all be more sustainable. So if the budget subcommittee could also take those things into consideration, from my personal point of view, that would be appreciated. And then I think the last part for me is one of the things that Councilmember Myrick raised up that we should all think about as well is like, what is the cost savings from reducing police overtime? And like, how can that be reallocated as well?
Okay, Joey, and then we'll open it up to public comment for this particular item.
Joanne, maybe as a starting point, the finance director can provide a breakdown by department about what the approximate allocations are per department. Obviously, I think most are going to be focused on and interested in the police department's budget, but also I think what's also important and something that Tamisha touched on is I think the budget right now is still uncertain whether there's a surplus or whether there's a deficit sit or where they're at. So I think what's also important is to get an accurate update from the finance director as far as where we sit, we as in the city sit with either a budget surplus or whether we're unfortunately working with a deficit or you know, how close we are to a balanced budget.
Okay. We're gonna open this up to public comment right now. If anyone of our attendees has a comment or a question regarding the smart budget and smart budget and resource allocations report, you will have 2 minutes to raise your hand, and we will accept the speakers in the order that they are raising your hand, and you will have 1 minute to speak.
Right, looks like we have one speaker. Oscar, you have 1 minute.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Oscar Garcia. I'm president of the Iron Triangle, and I also serve on the Community Police Review Commission, or the Police Commission, like many folks know. I was going to suggest that instead of taking the approach of reallocating the budget from the police department, if there's been any thought put into getting funding from the county, the state, or even the federal government to fund some of these projects, and then, you know, reevaluate the police budget after you start seeing potential success with some of these programs that you would like to implement. Because once you start the slippery slope of cutting the police budget, you could have a lot of unintended consequences, such as Oakland is seeing, in which they're having a hard time responding to the attacks on their Asian community. So I would say, please consider seeking alternative funds before you start cutting.
Thank you. That concludes the public comment for this particular item. We will go into a subgroup report from Accountability as Safety.
Well, I'll start off, and if anybody on the committee subgroup would like to add, we're having presentations. We broke our ideas down to 5 objectives that we wanted to look at. And so we started having presentations to give us more information about the different goals or objectives that we're trying to do. And so I think, if I'm not mistaken, I think we have a couple more presentations to do, but I think we might have to double up on our meetings to get them done in time. We meet every other week, and knowing our timeline now for April either 7th or 14th, we might have to double up. But at our last presentation, Randy gave you the 5 goals that we're looking at. And so we haven't changed. They're still the same 5 goals. We're just now getting more information about it so that we can do some recommendations at our next presentation. If anybody else want to say anything about what we're doing on the committee, Randy or Ben or Joey, Laura, Tamisha?
No, I think you explained it.
Yeah. Yeah, we're at that I guess point in our subgroup where we are actually pulling it all together now. We went through all the discussions, and now we're at the point now where we're going to start putting together the recommendations, which we should be able to do next couple of meetings and bring them back to this, the task force.
Does anyone from the group have questions for this subgroup?
I can go over our goals again if you want to hear the 5 goals. I don't know if I need to do that, because we've already gone over them, but I can go over the 5 goals again that we have stated as a group.
If there's anyone who hasn't heard them, they're always
they're in our folder.
Yes, on the Google Drive.
Okay, because of time, you have 7 o'clock up. Unless you want me to, I can. I don't see show of hands, but I want to hear the goals again that we're looking at.
They can go to the shared drive for that. We gotta move on.
Randy, I can't hear you. I'm sorry.
I said I think we gotta move on because we gotta extend the meeting. So can we extend the meeting?
Right. You know,
15
because
minutes
ours,
so that-
everything that I've talked about, including our last the presentation, you can find it in our folder at the website. Okay. Thank you.
Okay,
Yeah,
so
I make a motion to send the 15 minutes.
well, our meeting doesn't end until 7:30.
Oh, then
Yeah,
never
7
mind.
o'clock.
Yeah,
I thought it was.
but no, and
Well, okay, so I'll take another minute just to read the goals. The first one is to strengthen the community police review. The second goal was to improving the Richmond police process for police accountability. The third, improving the training of Richmond police officers. The fourth one is making police data community friendly, accessible, and digestible. And our fifth goal is to improve quality of the 911 communication system. Okay, because there are calls that are made there that they have to route to different places, so it's making it, there are problems in that 911 communication system that we're looking at to try to improve it. So those are our 5 goals, and we should be able to, at our next meeting, to come back with recommendations for, if not all 5, the ones that we feel we can do recommendations for. Any questions?
Marisol.
Just for clarity, would you be coming with budget recommendations for those trainings as well?
We talked about that, and I'm going to say I don't think so. We decided not to. We were looking more at what was happening during the trainings. If I'm wrong, let someone speak up, but I think at our last meeting, we said no, we wouldn't be looking at changing the financing for that. I don't know, Joey, and Laura, if you want to add anything, I think I'm right about that.
Yeah, and also we just recently had a presentation about training, and we haven't fully had a chance as a group to discuss what we want to take forward based on that information. So I think that we can get back to you also with more specific information once we've discussed it.
So knowing our timeline, we can get back to you offline and just make contact with your committee or with you. Okay, we'll do that.
Okay, so we are going to open this up for public comment. If there are any attendees, I do see that we already have one person with their hand raised, but we're going to be fair, open it up for 2 minutes to the attendees to, if you have a question or a comment, strictly on the accountability as safety group presentation. And I'll get to you, Joey, after. So we're going to start the 2-minute time period for attendees to raise their hand. Naomi, you have 1 minute to speak.
Naomi, you may go ahead and start.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes.
Okay, I'm just concerned a little bit because I think I heard you guys talking about reducing the overtime budget for the police department. I live on the south side of town and something always happening over here. So if something happened over here and the police is over like $200, does that mean that now they have to say, no, I can't come because we have no more budget, no more money in our overtime budget? Or is this something that you can't take care of? There's a lot of things that the police can't do, but we don't have enough police to do what we need to have to do for community policing. They have taken away our visits from the cops to come over here to see what's going on in our neighborhoods because they don't have enough officers. They can't use the overtime to do that. So how can we get involved if you says for police, community policing? How are we getting any incident out of getting? Okay, I'm through.
Thank you, Naomi. And I invite you to continue to come to the meetings because a lot of those answers will get answered as we go along. I mean, excuse me, a lot of your questions will get answered as we move along.
Okay.
Thank you. Joey and then Tamisha, real quick before we move into the health and safety group.
Yeah, I just wanted to thank Linda for the comprehensive report on behalf of the subcommittee. And she also did a lot of the legwork in reaching out to the police department with a lot of really good questions and an outline that kind of helped facilitate the presentation that we received.
Thank you.
Thanks, Joey. Tamisha?
Thank you, Linda, for reporting back for the group. I wanted to just quickly, I think as communities are looking at these different models of when police respond, when they don't respond, there is a lot of conversations around dispatch, new training, new systems. And then there were some concerns that were raised up, I think maybe by Ben, about somebody talked about the complications with our current dispatching system and our inability to retain dispatchers, to be able to make the calls more effective and redirect the calls to the right responders. And so I don't want to, I just wanted to acknowledge that there might be a budgetary expense, but I agree with Linda, we didn't talk about that.
Right.
Okay, thanks, Tamisha. So is there someone here from the health and safety group? Well, I see folks here, but I mean, that want to go ahead and give us a brief update?
Sure. It's going to be very brief. So, we actually, our subgroup hasn't had a chance to meet very often, unfortunately. There's been some very strange mishaps that are occurring, but we've talked. And one of the main things that we went through our last presentation was creating a group or a mental health crisis group team that could be more local and deal with more of the mental health crises and less police involvement. And this is something that we've discussed, but we haven't really gotten to the nitty gritty on that one, to be honest with you, as far as numbers and things of that nature. I will say though that Kristen Lobos, who is in, she's also in the community, the Reimagining community work group. They're working on the same thing, and we're hoping that hopefully we can work in conjunction and kind of team up and get some more traction on that. I think Kristen said that there's they're ahead of our group right now when it comes to the mental health crisis aspect, and I'm hoping we can collaborate and we can hopefully pick each other's brains about that subject. So that's something we'll stay tuned. We'll have something for the next meeting. We should have something a little bit more comprehensive when it comes to the mental health crisis goal that we had. from our last presentation. And we also discussed SOS, and Kristen, I believe, briefly talked to Daniel. Is it Klatz?
Barth.
Barth, sorry. I was sorry, I wasn't even close. And we also we had a little meeting earlier with Marisol and Randy and we had a meeting with, and it was discussed some numbers regarding what SOS was looking for, or what they already are receiving and what they're looking for as far as the transitional village idea that was introduced. I believe, and please correct me if I'm wrong, Marisol or Randy, I believe $200,000 was the number they were looking for that. And their whole budget, I believe right now is about $250,000 for their program. We're hoping to, get some numbers from Daniel. Kristen talked to Daniel, and I believe he said that he'll have something pretty concrete very soon as far as a proposal for what they need or what they're looking for, and just have some numbers, something more comprehensive from SOS. Am I right, Kristen?
Yeah, you're spot on. Yep.
Okay, good. So far, so good. So that's I really think that's a good. I really believe in that, what they're doing there, and hopefully we can allocate some funds there as well. Again, we don't have, we're not the budget committee, so we don't have specific numbers, but we are getting, slowly but surely, we are getting some numbers and some exact figures of what people are what these programs are looking for and what they're receiving now. And also we during that meeting we talked about ONS and some of their awesome programs. We talked to Mr. Vaughn, who I believe is on here. I'm not sure, he might be just listening, but we talked to Mr. San Vaughn, and he gave us some good insight, and he gave us some numbers. And Marisol had a graph that showed what percentage of the general fund they're receiving as opposed to what the police department is receiving. Police department is receiving 41% of the general fund. Please correct me if I'm wrong, officers. And ONS is receiving 1% of the general fund. And we talked about, and Kristen and I talked about our subgroup. We'd like to see that number from the ONS increase, whether it's from the general fund or any other fund that is available. From what I understand, and again, this is a question that's been asked throughout this whole meeting, is where is this money exactly coming from? I thought our charge, and we talked about this earlier, Marisol and Randy, was from the general fund funding of the police department. I don't know how the fire department even got mentioned today. This is the first time I've heard fire department even said during any of these meetings. Maybe I wasn't listening, but I thought that from what I understand, this panel, this task force was set up to allocate, to reallocate, not to slash, or just to allocate funds to different alternative policing programs. So ONS received 1%. We'd like to see that go higher. And again, I know I'm not being exact. I know I'm not a budget guy, but hopefully we can get that up to at least 2% and reallocate those funds. Again, it's preliminary, but we're hammering away, and we're doing work, and hopefully things like that will be more defined later. According to Sam, Office of Neighborhood Safety has right now 6 staff members. Am I right, Marisol? Was that correct? And at each staff member costing, I don't know what exactly this entails, salary and things of insurance, I don't know, but $111,000 a person, so that's about $660,000 for staff. and then there's a plethora of other costs that I'm not going to go over here because we're going over time, but there's a lot of, so from the general fund, basically they receive $1.5 million. And we'd like to see that increased, hopefully even doubled, and that's something we're working on. And there's something that we're hopefully going to have more comprehensive numbers. Sam, Mr. Vaughn shared, I'm going to share my screen real quick. He shared this document with us, and of course, I'm not able to do it because I don't know how to share my screen. But here, let me try it like this. Okay. Ooh, I don't even know which one is going to be the right one.
Well, you can bring it back
Harry.
when we do our next review.
Okay. Anyway, it's just some numbers, and basically it's saying that, God, I wish you guys could see this, but it's saying that, all the work they've been doing, and it's showing the effectiveness of what that work has entailed, what it's produced. And it's according to what their documentation says and what Sam says, it's saved up to 12 to 28 million dollars from gun violence interruptions. And, there's a high cost for every shooting injury that occurs. The more we reduce that, the less money it's going to cost. And so that's what it says that's the documentation we got from Sam. And I think it's important that that program is funded and receives more funding. And that's something we're going to work on. Again, there are numbers, there are budgets there are budgetary items that are involved. It's just, we don't have time, and we're working on that. So that's what we've been working on in our committee and with our little subcommittee that we had today with Marisol and Randy. That's it. That's all I got.
Okay, thank you guys, or thank you folks. Tim, I've seen you had your hand raised for a while. I'm not sure if it's
Mr. Simmons.
Yeah, it was just in regards to this particular subcommittee. I was going to ask them if they have learned anything about or know about or did any research with MH First, Mental Health First. It's the community first response that's kind of started out of Oakland. My thought is it's an actual program that's already in existence that is looking to expand, and we're neighboring cities. And I can tell you, as a police department, we partner with OPD on the regular. And so there's already kind of a nexus built in there with how we work with them. You have MH First, which does have a partnership with OPD in terms of transitioning calls for mental health calls, substance abuse calls.
Right.
They add into that they add in domestic violence calls. I would really caution the domestic violence side of it, because there's mandatory reporting issues. There's a whole nother world of potential issues that might come with that one.
Right.
But it's a system, it's an organization that's already functioning, they exist. And so in terms of cost, to be able to expand it to Richmond clinicians, I know, Kristen, you're already really involved in this stuff, and some of the others of you might be also. They work with volunteers and paid folks. So just a thought about looking at something that's already in existence that has crossed that bridge of transitioning these calls from a police response to a non-police response.
Right.
Piggybacking on the learning curve that they have been able to be successful in. And it's a whole nother phone number you call. I mean, you're not even calling 911 for these things. So it's a completely separate response from a police response altogether for mental health, substance abuse.
Right.
Just a thought. I've contacted them. I've connected with them. I've been encouraged with what I saw there, and I just thought that maybe that might be a starting point for something for you all, if you're interested in that, to look at it as a reasonable beginning spot to do something unique and different, even within Richmond, as it relates to these things you're talking about.
That's a great suggestion, and that's definitely something I have heard of this program. I don't know a lot about it, but thank you for the suggestion. That is something that will definitely be looked into. We're always looking at programs that already have been established, and if they fit with the needs that this committee is our goals, then we'll definitely look into that. And thank you for the suggestion.
I'll forward any information I have to
Please.
Joanne, so that she can kind of filter it all down to you guys. Okay.
Please. Thank you. Yep,
Thank
appreciate
you,
it.
Councilman Tamisha, and then, okay, Tamisha, Joey, and then we're gonna open it up to public comment for the health and safety group.
Thank you for the presentation. I want to raise up, and also thank you for raising up the ONS model, which is also Richmond's other public safety office. I would say that if you look at the because you all haven't decided around like, well, what the cost might be, I would say if you look at the police budget and their job is to address harm in the city and crime, and you look at ONS's job, which is interrupting violence, particularly gun violence, you might see that ONS budget should be equal to or as close to the police department budget as possible.
That's what we're trying to
Also want
work toward.
to be mindful that mental health response teams. So I do not remember the guy's name from the police department because I'm kind of like nobody's name is popping up for me right now. But thank you for mentioning mental health response teams. I also just want to be clear that even I mean, a lean mental health crisis response team could cost upwards to $2 million for a city to operate.
Sure
So
can.
when you're thinking about mental health crisis response up in the budget of ONS, you're talking about into the millions. And so I would just think about looking at the police department's budget, and
For
then
sure.
also just think it could be in the millions to increase the budget of ONS as well as implement a mental health crisis response team. And even if y'all don't say like this is the number, I think some amount should be suggested or looked at.
Yeah, thank you.
so much.
And it will be in the millions. And we have looked at numbers. It's just, I don't feel like I'm going to say, well, you know, there's still numbers that need to come in and there's still information that we need to gather. So I'm not at a point right now where I can give exact numbers, but our recommendation will probably be in the millions. I mean, I'm just going to throw that out there.
Yeah, I'm just going to add that because I'm in this on this task force in this subcommittee, but I'm also in the Reimagining Richmond Community Working Group, and I have been since last summer. And I just want to lift up that we will have very clear, when it's all said and done, very soon we'll have clear recommendations with a budget for mental health, mobile mental health crisis teams, harm reduction, which I'm really lifting up, and ONS and SOS.
Right. And that's, and again, hopefully we'll be able to work in conjunction with the working group, the community working group, to get these numbers exacted and ready to go.
There's a lot of skilled people working on this behind the scenes. There's emails. Some of us are in 3 or 4 Zooms a week. Their work is getting done, and it's really coming together. It's very exciting. So it's a lot happening.
Thank you.
Joey, and then we'll open this up for public comment.
Hey, Marcus, I think at the last meeting, I may have mentioned a couple of things regarding mental health, and I'm just wondering if you had an opportunity, subcommittee had an opportunity to follow up on it. One was some kind of a mental health clinic that Eastern Alameda County is opening up, including some kind of a call center. I think it involves Dublin, Pleasanton, and Livermore. And the other one was a mental health response team that I think is being managed out of the San Francisco Fire Department, where they have a team. I think that they're focusing on the Tenderloin right now, and I was wondering if you were able to do a little bit of research on both of those things.
Very little. I'm sorry. Like, I remember you mentioning that. I do. And we've only been able to discuss so much, and we haven't met as often as, like I said, as often as I want, due to some personal things with some of the group members and some of our.
Well, don't forget, we also had a meeting at the same time as the roundtable.
Yeah, I know.
Which was
There's-
like from the get-go, not a good idea.
we had some logistical problems as well, but I will definitely, I'm going to write this down again. I'm going to take this in my notes, and honestly, no, I have not researched that particular program, but I will. And thank you for mentioning it again.
Yeah, and just as a reminder, I know the mental health clinic. There was an article in the Contra Costa Times. I would say probably since we met last, so within the last month or so, that really kind of spelled out how it was going to work and what cities were involved. It was pretty interesting.
Okay, thank you, and I'm putting that on my to-do list right now. Thank you. It's always good to look at other programs, just like Officer Swimmer said.
And if there's an article that you see, you can send me the link. And I've started, in addition to the email I sent, I've started a resource like listing in the Google Drive. So if you want to send me any links to articles you guys find or anything, send it to me and I can help upload that. But we're going to open this up to public comment. And it looks like we already have one person raise their hand a day, but we're going to start the 2 minutes so that if any other attendees want to speak, we can get you on the list in the order that you receive. So a day, you have 1 minute.
A day you may go
Can you
ahead.
hear me?
I'm
Can
sorry.
you guys hear me?
Yes.
Wait, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, it's coming. It's the internet. I apologize, everybody. Hi.
Hello.
Thank you. Thank you for all of the work that's being done. I just wanted to say that first, and I've been listening the whole meeting. And the only thing that I ask everybody to consider in regards to the budget, because I work in the Reimagining public safety, the budget subgroup, and I would like to increase the budget for ONS by 5%. I heard Marcus say 1%. I think we can push it to 5%.
That'd be
because
great.
you guys have no idea what it takes to prevent gun violence, the type of relationships that you have to have in the community, type of hours that you have to put in it, and the type of character that you have to prevent the violence from happening. And so I really think we should consider that. And that's all I have to say.
Thank you, Ade.
I would like to say that I thank you very much for that comment. You know, increasing it 1% actually means doubling their budget. So just throwing that out there, that the 1% is actually would be 2 times the actual allocation that they would get. So 5% would.
Yeah. To make it
Was
more
that
clear,
Randy?
Yeah, to make it more clear for you, that 1% is 1% of the general
fund
budget.
Right.
So instead of having 1%, have to be 2%.
Right. And what I meant by 1% was instead of 1% of the general fund, 2% of the general fund, not just 1% of their total. So meaning instead of $1.5 million being allocated by the general fund, it would be $3 million. That's hopefully I'm clarifying for you a little bit more. And I just got.
Sorry, Marcus, I'm going to cut you off.
Can I just real quick? Can I say one quick? Okay. I just got information that Reimagine Richmond is going to have a proposal for community crisis response by Friday. So.
Okay, great. Thank you for the announcement. We have one final group, but it's 7:30. And it's the community-based solutions. And then we also need to discuss our recaps around our meeting times and meeting dates and how we are going to proceed with the work that needs to happen within the next month. So is there a motion to extend the meeting?
Yeah, can I send the motion to send the meeting 15 minutes or 30 minutes just to be safe? 30 minutes.
Second.
Okay, I'm gonna create a poll. And please answer if you agree with the motion. And as always, if for some reason, for whatever reason, if you're unable to stay, We appreciate your service. We appreciate all that you do, and thank you for coming, and you are welcome to also exit the meeting. Okay, it looks like we will be adjourning at 8 p.m. So who is here from the Community-Based Solutions Group to provide us a report?
I can share out if that's cool. And then,
Eddie?
Yeah, and then if I miss anything, I'd like to ask the rest of the group to add on. But since last time we reported back, we realized that some of our work was overlapped in the other subcommittee findings and research. So we decided to go a different route. Just thinking about youth, right? Although youth incarceration has declined over the years, our county still incarcerates youth at a high rate compared to many counties throughout the state. I'm not saying that all these youth are coming from Richmond, but some of them may be. So we've been talking about the importance of having our young people occupied with life skills and engagement in our community. And some of that work consists of economic and workforce development. So we have been thinking and doing some talking about the summer jobs that the city provides to our youth. And we know that there are thousands of people, thousands of young folks who are in need of jobs, right? But there's really a limited amount of jobs that are provided to them. And keep in mind, this is only for the summer. So we were in contact with Bouquet. I think her name is Bouquet. She's the employment specialist of the city. We had her come into our subcommittee group and just share a little bit about the needs of youth employment. And she shared a little bit about how last year there was about 500 students or young folks who applied, but many of them dropped due to COVID. And also she mentioned about, instead of having youth in the summer, maybe proposing a year-long thing. And so that's just some of what we've been talking about. I'm sure I missed a lot, so I'll defer to the rest of my group to please chime in if y'all can.
Hey, this is BK. I just want to chime in. That was a lot of what we talked about. Some of the other things we talked about, I mean, several of the groups here have been talking about, how we're going to deal with the police budget. And we sort of are looking at how to prevent folks from entering the cycle of having to deal with police. And so that was important to us. And also we've compiled a list of a lot of other organizations besides the youth work group that does work with the community. And we want to encourage the city to use some of those organizations that already exist in the city and that are doing good work. Some of you have talked about ONS and other groups that are, working in the city. So we want to really reallocate the budget in that way so that the funding is going out of the police department and into work that might deter folks and prevent them from even having to interact with the police because they're working. So thanks.
Anyone else from your group?
Tamisha is in our group.
Oh, Tamisha, pardon me. There's so many people that are in two groups, I get mixed.
Look, me and Randy, I just want to acknowledge and appreciate Randy, just like straight up. It's hard. And I know that I haven't been able
to,
and I know that I've, because of my schedule, I'm not able to show up all the time, but I am following the documentation. But what I will say also came up, I know other groups are looking at homelessness, but I wanted to raise up that we did talk about youth homelessness, and that while we're looking at responses to homelessness and what we can do about that, I rarely hear us talk about youth who are homeless, those youth living on the street. couch hopping in shelters, and asked for some type of information from the Rice Center to understand like the young people that they're serving and how many referrals we do from the city of Richmond out to other cities to house homeless youth. And that we might want to think about what can the city of Richmond do as other groups are looking at responses to homelessness. What can we also do to look at other models from across the area where homeless youth are being housed and supported? And so I wanted to raise that up, that it came up in our group, so other groups who are probably looking at this it could be on their mind.
Joey?
Yeah, I just wanted to let Eddie and BK and the others know, in addition to some of the other things that employment and training has regarding the youth, they have Richmond Build, which I think is a really great program to provide some basic skills, to provide folks with not a minimum wage job, but a good living wage. And Richmond Build also has access to the trades, which not only provides a great salary and a great living for folks, but health benefits and the like. So if you haven't talked to them, you might want to circle back around and get some more information and put the word out. Richmond Build is a great program to provide some basic skills to get people some really good job opportunities.
Thank you, Joey.
Thank you.
Kristen.
Yeah, thank you for mentioning Richmond Build. I actually just had a tour there with the young youth teen that I'm mentoring, and one of the case managers there told me that they don't provide housing, but they have some kind of budget for housing. So I'm really curious. I'm going to find out more about that. Richmond Build is amazing. I was so impressed. So the other thing I wanted to mention is I'm going to be attending, and I think Marcus is attending, April 2nd. We're going to go to the grand opening of the Youth Tiny House Village in Oakland and find out more about that program. I have a past connection with Youth Spirit Artworks in Berkeley that helped create that village. So we are sort of doing some other research on that. I agree. We need to really figure out ways to support our unhoused youth. Thank you, Tamisha, for reminding me about that. Thanks.
Yeah, I don't want to get up on a soapbox, but just real quick, I'm a firm believer that a university or a college isn't made for everyone, and in lieu of that, I think some of our youth need to be redirected to the trades, whether it's becoming a mechanic, a carpenter, a plumber. I mean, those are all really good paying jobs with good benefits.
And much needed.
Eddie?
Yeah, no, thank you, Joey. I would definitely agree with you on that. I just think like just bringing it back to, the capacity of, or, just thinking of how many young people are already at Richmond Build, just how can we expand that, right? Because there is a lot of young people in our city and a lot of undocumented young people as well. So how can we open opportunities as well for those undocumented young folks? So, just something to keep in mind, like how can we expand this to have more opportunities for young people?
Randy?
I was working. I wanted to make sure that was added that I am reaching out also to Cali House to talk about funding and how house will transition to HU. There's a lot of thing about we do about unhoused youth is like, oh, we throw some money at them, but we don't think about the next stage of the next process and making sure they don't go back into a cycle of homelessness and making sure we end that cycle. So we do the best we can to So meeting with the outside that group and bring back to our subcommittee more information about College House and their transitioning program. And hopefully we can figure that out as well. So I don't know if that was added. I just wanted to add that. And just shout out to Tamisha because she's the one that really brought that to our attention. I don't know, we always working really, really hard to do all that work. And she brought it to our attention like, hey, we are, I think in every group we're talking about the same things, but nobody brought that up. So it's something that we singled out and that we got right to work to do that work to figure out how we can support and help. So that was great. That was on Tamisha's part to make that recommendation. And I'm nobody. So Tamisha, you're my hero for all the work that you've done. So I'm trying to be like you, just with no kids.
You guys are all my heroes, every single last one of you, even the people attending this meeting. Thank you so much. This entire process has been so inspiring. So thank you for being here. Everyone's a hero in some shape, form, or fashion. And if anyone else from your group wants to speak or any other member of the committee has any questions or suggestions, if not, we're going to open it up to public comment for this. For the community-based solutions. Marisol?
Just any of the proposals that are going out there, if you could connect with the subcommittee group, so then we can find funding for it essentially, whether that's training, whether that's Richmond Works, whether it's ONS, any of the programs out there, so we can really build our analysis around that. So thanks.
And if you guys have any suggestions on how to cross-communicate between the groups, I'll be more than willing to help coordinate and assist with that. I know that we have set up the Google Drive in order for people to dump information in there and for everyone to kind of go in there as they're needed to check out each other's work, figure out what everyone's doing. But I know that it's also been a challenge for people to get their stuff in there and keep it updated. You know, I'm here as a conduit. Let me know how you guys want to do things. And I'm more than willing to help. Tamisha, did you want to say something or no?
Oh, I was thinking about, I don't know why this issue with a Brown Act keeps coming up for me, because I think we already been informed that these groups don't fall under the Brown Act, but I'm also just thinking that maybe, and this is probably already somewhere where we know when all the groups are meeting, and maybe people from other subcommittees could just kind of rotate out and go to other groups to just listen. That could also be an option. I also know that I descended from the community Reimagining Public Safety group because I didn't want any conflict to happen. But figuring out a way to incorporate what's happening in the community into our subgroups would also be important, because it would be unfortunate for us to develop all of these recommendations and then the community comes forward with a proposal that contradicts the proposals being made by this task force. I would hope not to see any division between this task force and the community. So as we're talking about, the community work group is doing this and they're going to be sharing this, and I think it'd be important for them to share what they're doing with every subcommittee, just for recommendation purposes. And I'll close with that.
And I'll kind of vouch to say, like, I know that there's lots of cross-pollination between the community group and this task force. And then there's some folks that are doing both and then able to kind of transfer some information. And then also there has been some discussion about getting more presentations from them. And that's kind of a good idea too, to have them come to the subcommittee group meetings. There is not like a published schedule of the subgroup meetings. There's been a couple changes. And so, and then to kind of make sure that we're not getting too many folks in those meetings from the task force. But if anyone ever wants to visit a task force meeting, let me know. I mean, excuse me, a subgroup meeting, let me know. And then I could totally get that coordinated for you and set it up. But I do know, like, we have already extended the meeting, so let's go ahead and get public comment from the community-based solutions. For that group, if there are any attendees that would like to comment or have a question about the community-based solutions, we can try to get that answered at another time. But if anyone from the attendees wants to speak, you have 2 minutes to raise your hand, and in the order that you raise your hand, you will be heard for 1 minute. So we're going to start the 2-minute time period now. It's another stretching session. Or give yourself a hug. 2. How much time do we have left, Lupe?
About 30 seconds.
Okay.
Two minutes is up.
Thank you. So, I guess we have a few things to decide on as far as, I did these polls out of order, which is going to make this a little bit hard. So we are scheduled to have our next general meeting on the 14th of April, as Linda reminded us. And as Jim mentioned, it would be great to have as many of our budget recommendations set forth like that week. So I'm not sure, but then there's also been discussion around that, you know, there may or may not still be time after that. So I heard one suggestion is to have an additional meeting. And I also heard the suggestion to have the April 14th meeting, turn that into another working session where all we have are the subgroups discussing, recommending, presenting, you guys deciding on how you want to proceed, procedural meeting. So I guess, how about we do this?
Joanne, I thought I kind of heard from the group that they don't want to be driven by any particular date. So I don't want anybody to feel like, you know, they got to make this 14th thing. They're right. They can take their recommendation to the council anytime they want. So it might be something you want to get a sense of. I don't want them to feel compelled to have to do this by the 14th.
With that, first, let's decide, do we want to take off the Department of Children and Youth presentation and just create the April 14th to be a working session or working group meeting for similar to how we had this evening? So is there does someone want to make that motion to not have the Department of Children and Youth come?
Would people, oh, sorry.
A clarifying question, how long is that presentation? Is there not a way that we can still do updates and do the work like we did today? Instead of a full 2-hour presentation from them? I just haven't seen the agenda, so I just wanted to understand what that day looks like.
Well, just kind of looking back and historically, just trying to, understand how, the presentations, the presenters come, and then as there's question and answer, and then back and forth. And then I haven't experienced a meeting where we've really been able to get to like everything within with being out of integrity around the time. And I'm also want you to consider, like, could we possibly get a written report from children and youth, or is that relevant to what you guys are talking about now? I mean, I think at the time it was within the purview, but I'm not sure based on what you guys are starting to come up with. I'm not sure if Linda, you had a question?
Yeah, I'm just looking at today's meeting. We always have to extend half an hour or so. And if we're going to have reports by each recommendations, hopefully by each subgroup, with enough time for the task force to ask questions, and then we give all of our subgroups give recommendations, then we might have to vote on prioritizing these recommendations. I think we need to have the 2 hours for us to really discuss it and make some good decisions. So trying to squeeze it in an hour and then having to vote to extend an hour. So I would make a motion. Now, is this for us doing it on the 7th or?
Well, right now we're just dealing with taking the children and youth off the presentation schedule.
I make a motion that I hate to say take them off, but anyway, it doesn't sound right, that we not hear their presentation, but that we devote the time to our subgroups, recommendations, and questions from the task force, and making decisions on our recommendations.
I second. I hate to take away from the children and youth. I mean,
I know it
nobody
didn't
wants
sound
to
right.
do that.
I know. That's why
I
said,
feel like an evil person.
I don't want to say it that
understand.
way, but Joanne forced me to blame Joanne.
Okay.
I think we need the time. I really do.
I think
I'll be the scapegoat. Okay, so I'm gonna launch this poll. If you guys can please answer, and
I'd just like to make a friendly amendment to Joanne that we include that we're going to blame Joanne for all of this.
I second that.
Second.
I'll take it.
Second.
I'll put my shield up. I'll just put my shield up.
I'll just lift up, I'm on the Children and Youth Oversight Board. If people want to reach out to me, they have questions about it. Plus the staff is fantastic in our Children and Youth department. If anyone needs to know more about it, it's totally available.
Sorry, Kristen.
Okay. I understand.
Sorry.
It's awesome. It's awesome. We're doing great stuff.
I know.
Yeah.
I know.
I love everybody over there. That's one of my favorite groups of folks. But okay, so it sounds like our next general meeting that's already scheduled for April 14th will be a working session, subgroup report out. Okay. Now, does the group want to add another general meeting to the schedule for April? Whether that's the 7th or not, I don't know. Just let's answer. Do people want to have another general meeting in April? If that's the case, then will someone make a motion to have another general meeting in April?
I think we have a meeting scheduled for the 4th Wednesday already, the 28th of April.
Well, we always do. We always have 2 per month.
Okay, so just remember that when you say another
so-
meeting, yeah, we already have that one.
Okay.
You mean
A
the
third
7th, Chris? Do you mean the 7th, Joanne? Is that what you mean? You're talking
Or
about the 7th?
different, or different, maybe the, instead of
21st?
the,
21st?
maybe the 21st.
Mhm.
Because that will be after the community roundtable session. Yes, ma'am. Linda.
Okay, I make a motion that we have our meeting on April the 7th. Even if we don't have all the recommendations ready for the 14th, we can still submit something from this committee to the council as to what things we're doing or something to show that, you know, the progress we're making. We might not have all recommendations, but I think it'd be worth us having a meeting on the 7th to try to get recommendations together. And then we'll have the 14th with already planned if we need to meet. And we can decide, you know, on the 7th, if we're ready for recommendations to present or just some kind of statement from this task force to the city council. But something, I think, to show good faith, what we're doing would be worth it. So I make a motion that we meet on April the 7th for a special or added meeting for the safety task force.
I'll
We can call
second
it a
it.
special meeting.
I'll
Okay,
second.
Special meeting.
Okay, so I'm
Second.
gonna launch another poll.
You haven't run out of polls yet?
I have, this is the final. I don't have any more polls.
You need 7, right? You don't need more than that, I think.
It's because all those minutes, all the minutes. Okay. For those, well, it's okay. But just so you guys know, I won't be here on the 7th. You'll have to have your meeting without me.
Oh, no. I take it
Oh,
back.
no.
But will Jim be here with his turkey dinner?
I'm sure
All right.
he will.
All right.
He's not.
Hey,
Yes.
so is the meet, are we saying that we want to have a special meeting on the 7th? I thought that you mentioned the 21st.
Well, that was an alternative date for folks. And then Linda came back with the 7th as a better date because then we could prepare something for the week of the 15th. I'll be here on the 21st if you guys want to switch the date to the 21st.
Joanne, I would offer up that the 21st might be better. Some of us that have kids, you know, we're talking about spring break and whether we're going to be out of town or whatnot. So I'm not really sure that the 7th is really conducive. At least it's not for me. And again, I don't think that the 14th or the 15th is really a hard sell to provide something to the city council. If we give them something by the end of April, I think we're still okay.
And I hear you. And I also just want to remind folks too that it's after the community roundtable and it's after the first meeting where you guys already will have a working session. So do folks want to switch it to the 21st?
I understand. Can I amend my motion then?
Yes, ma'am.
I just thought I was thinking about the 14th, but we can use the 14th for that planning and recommendations. Come back on the 21st, so make Joanne have to work and have our meeting then, and then plan something we can present to the city council. I just want to make sure that we do something that we can present something to the city council. We've been meeting for a while now, and I like to have something from this task force showing that we are moving in a positive direction and we're meeting our charge from them. So I say the 14th and then the 21st, right?
I would just add that the 21st can be a fallback just in case everything is not finalized on the 14th. I think that's another selling point to it.
Yeah,
and we can set up, it's a special meeting, we can set it up, staff will be here, you know, we'll have time to talk about it more before then. It's not, but did you want to say something, Eddie, before you guys vote? I see some people are already voting. I didn't mean to launch it like that, but go ahead. Oh, no, you don't? Okay.
Oh, well, that was me with my
Not
hand
Eddie,
up.
I'm sorry, Luis.
Oh, it's all good. I mean, no, I'm down with the 21st. My comment was just in regards to communicating to the city council that we do hope or plan on having some type of recommendation by whatever date we agree to, right, for sure, by the end of the month. So you could just make sure that that's communicated.
Okay.
So what are we voting on, Joanne? This says,
so now, okay, we're voting on the amended request to have a special meeting instead of the 7th on the 21st. Okay. So all of those in favor of that, and I think Marcus already seconded your tag team guy there. He's so if you're in favor of switching the date from the 7th to the 21st, then answer here.
I think we'll make a good team.
Yes, you guys are all a good team. This whole team is a good team. Okay, so I'm going to update our meeting schedule on the website and then put notice that we will be having a special meeting on the 21st. And that way, okay. That way you guys won't have to miss me. Okay, so the only other thing that I request people consider between now and their next subgroup meeting is that you discuss this, the idea that has been generated around extending the term of this task force. And if so, what that looks like. I just kindly request that you do that within your subgroups and that you will be prepared to bring that back to the group so that we can get some motions and voting on that and get that in, set that in motion also. So is there anything else that I missed around recapping? Can anyone think of anything?
Joanne, I'd like to make a motion to adjourn because it's after 8.
Thank you. I just want to make sure.
Oh, you're doing everything right.
I don't want to let go. Okay. So, okay, good night. Bye.
I'm just helping you out.
Bye.
Okay.